to extreme terrorism. The proposal also blames Kenya's patriarchal society of tough heterosexual men for problems in the developing country. Researchers will focus on fathers and community leaders specifically. And students at an Ivy League school can get up to $10,000 for starting a conversation. Princeton University is offering students grants to hold lectures or workshops on identity and difference through the campus Concentrations on Identity program. As some qualifying topics include inclusion, solidarity, allyship, and social constructs. And now this, a Bible battle is heating up in one state. That's where a new bill would give public school students the choice to learn about history and literature using text from the Bible. And joining me now to break all this down, both sides of the argument, is Pastor Demas Salaberios. Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, it's good to be here.
So first, let's take people through exactly what we're talking about. It's the state of Iowa, and we can bring up a couple facts about it. The bill would allow a high school elective that teaches history, literary style, and influence of the New Testament. Schools are not allowed, though, to endorse, favor, or promote any religion. So explain to us what that means.
I mean, first of all, I want to applaud Iowa. I mean, I think that's a great decision. And, you know, the Bible, all of literature, at least Western literature in one way or another, points to the Bible. You can't read Shakespeare without coming across a Bible verse. If you get into Nietzsche, you know, you have to think about the Bible, you know, Machiavelli, all these kind of books. So the Bible is an excellent tool for one, you know, for people to look at history on how kings were made. It's a great book so people can really study heroes and people that have come out of slavery, people that have walked from a farmer to a leader, from different people that are in leadership areas like kings and princes, and how people can really, you know, examine their lives, govern their lives.
So teaching it as history, not as religion. How can you separate those two?
You know, for example, I remember I was invited to a high school here in New York, and they asked me to teach a leadership class. So I said, I'm a pastor, so I'll teach leadership, but let me use some great examples from the Bible. And they said, why not? So we started to walk through different characteristics of people. The Bible, they're people that lived all over the world, crossed geographical lines. They're actual lives that you can see starting from beginning, walking, and these are not made-up characters. I mean, you can go to these sites. I took my children into Turkey to visit all these different areas of the Bible.
And that's the other thing we were discussing, just the geography and the lesson that you can learn there from the Bible as to what we're talking about, places we talk about today in the news. And as we continue our conversation, we can look at the other states, actually the 7 other states that have passed laws supporting Bible literature courses. There's a look at some of them right there. So it seems to be a movement.
Yeah, I hope it continues to be a movement, because some people want to look at it and say, oh my gosh, you know, I don't want to discriminate. But discriminating from that literature is, you know, is actually like you're saying, I'm scared of this, or this could really affect people. But if you look at even values today, we've gone from hard work to now, you know, material wealth. We've gone from hard work to, oh, my comfort. We've gone from understanding like things like, you know, patriotism or civil, you know, civil actions, to now looking at the different values of my comfort, my safety, you know, my independence. So, you know, these would be good things for children to read, for people to understand just the impact that they could have in this great nation they live in.
Not just children. I want to know the next time you're teaching a course, I'd like to come hear it.
Oh, we'd love to have you
Thank
anytime.
you so much.
Heather.
That was awesome. Very inspiring. Well, the time now, actually, before we get to that, we have this that we need to tell people about. Over the weekend, Fox News suffered a tragedy in our family. Brian Sterling, you can see him there. He's a video server playout operator. He collapsed during his shift, later passing away. Brian leaves behind his wife, Lori, his 16-year-old daughter, and 13-year-old son. He also leaves behind countless friends here at Fox after nearly 8 years as a vital member of our technical operations team. You couldn't meet a nicer person. He always had a smile on his face like that right there. Our prayers, of course, go out to Brian's entire family and all of his friends. You will be missed. Steve Brown was performing in South Carolina when a man in the front row, you can see, he just started swinging.
Fighting at the Comedy House, Jesus.
Well, at one point, the man tried to attack with a bar stool. He was finally escorted off stage by other attendees, but it wasn't over yet. He tried to come back for a second round. No word on what provoked the attack. Brown was not seriously injured, amazingly. Well, President Trump and Arnold Schwarzenegger's ongoing feud just got a little bigger. The actor and former governor of California lashing out, telling our commander-in-chief that if he wants to drill, do it off Mar-a-Lago. Schwarzenegger tweeting this: "Don't touch California. Follow California's lead and go green, and we can all breathe easier." Earlier this month, the Trump administration announced plans to allow new offshore oil and gas drilling in almost all U.S. coastal waters. And finally, O.J. Simpson wants the Goldman family to leave him alone. The Blast reports that Simpson is tired of Ron Goldman's grieving father dragging him to court every time it looks like Simpson is making a little bit of money. That's what Simpson's saying. Well, the disgraced former football star still owes the Goldman family $71 million after he was found civilly liable for the deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman. Well, that wraps up this hour of Fox and Friends First. I'll see you tomorrow. Fox and Friends First continues right now. Bye-bye.
It is Tuesday, January 23rd. No stone left unturned. The shocking messages just uncovered and the probe just launched by Attorney General Jeff Sessions into the months of missing FBI texts.
We will vote today to reopen the government.
Strategy to shut down the government over the issue of illegal immigration is something the American people didn't understand.
All right, open for business again and back to work. The 69-hour government shutdown over as Democrats cave in the immigration fight. And President Trump signs a bill to fund the government, though the clock is ticking once again now, as Congress now has only about 2 weeks to reach some kind of a deal on DACA and immigration.
Patriotism rejected. Outrage as the NFL says no to a veterans group trying to run a Super Bowl ad encouraging players to stand. Fox and Friends First continues right now. Lights on all hours of the day in New York City.
Waste a lot of energy around here, don't we?
But in Washington, the lights are back on this morning.
That's right.
And I bet they are on right now because I bet President Trump is awake.
And I bet a lot of people are working right now. There's a lot to do in the next couple weeks.
Yes, there is.
Yeah.
Good morning. You are watching Fox and Friends First on this Tuesday. I'm Jillian Mealy.
And I'm Rob Schmidt. Thanks for starting your day with us today. This Tuesday, straight to our top story. No stone will be left unturned. Attorney General Jeff Sessions vowing to get to the bottom of how key FBI texts between anti-Trump agents simply vanished.
GOP lawmakers also demanding a second special counsel launch an investigation. Kelly Wright joins us live in D.C. with the details. Good morning, Kelly.
Jillian and Rob, good morning to you both. This case is sounding more and more like a book or a movie filled with political intrigue. But this is not fictional. The characters are real, and they have damaged the integrity of the FBI. Attorney General Jeff Sessions confirms that FBI agent Peter Strzok and FBI attorney Lisa Page exchanged more than 50,000 text messages for 2 years. Some of those texts are missing. Sessions vows the Justice Department will leave no stone unturned in searching for them. Lawmakers want to know if any criminal activity has taken place.
Of course, we need a second special counsel to get to the bottom of to get to the bottom of all this and answer the many questions we have.
Republicans are still very concerned about possible corruption within the FBI's leadership, referring to this text that revealed Strzok's reference to an insurance policy and meeting in Andy's office. It went on to say, "I want to believe the path you threw out for consideration in Andy's office, that there is no way Trump gets elected, but I'm afraid we can't take that risk." And it goes on to say it's like an insurance policy, and the the unlikely event you die before you're 40. Now, that text and others have some lawmakers concerned that certain FBI agents were operating a secret society meant to discredit then candidate Donald Trump.
You have this insurance policy in the spring of 2016, and then the day after the election, the day after what they really didn't want to have happen, there's a text exchange between these two FBI agents, these two supposed to be objective, fact-centric FBI agents saying perhaps this is the first meeting of the secret society.
The Inspector General is investigating all of this as well to determine if the missing text was a deliberate act, and that could lead to a whole lot of trouble for these two agents as well as for besmirching the integrity of the FBI.
All right, Kelly, yeah, we dig deeper into this one coming up later in the show. A big story this morning. All right, the public could have access to the memo that details the Obama administration's alleged abuse of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, the FISA Act, within weeks now. That could come out. According to the Washington Examiner, House Judiciary Chairman Bob Goodlatte and Oversight Chairman Trey Gowdy, who we just heard from, weighing the fate of the report with the Intelligence Chairman Devin Nunes. They reportedly want more lawmakers to have a chance to read this memo. It's about 4 pages long before making a final decision. Republicans hoping to release what they call that jaw-dropping memo on surveillance abuses. Florida Congressman Matt Gaetz has seen the memo himself. He believes the American people deserve to see it as well. Gaetz actually believes that this Obama spying on the Trump campaign thing could actually be worse than Watergate.
It is no longer disputable that a pro-Hillary Clinton, anti-Donald Trump bias has intractably infected the FBI, and the United States of America is in jeopardy as a consequence. And Sean, you laid out a great timeline, but there are even more damaging facts to come. I know that's hard to believe, but trust me, around the corner, we're going to be learning even more about how infected this investigation is, particularly the Mueller probe. Just look at this. In August, you had Strzok and Page saying they were going to be the insurance policy. They were going to save America from a Trump presidency. The American people are never going to believe that 2 days after Barack Obama sicked the intelligence community on President Trump, that all of a sudden these text messages went dark, and then they just happened to reappear and come alive the day after Robert Mueller is selected to be the special counsel. It would be the coincidence of all coincidences.
All right, the process of releasing this memo could take up to 19 congressional working days, which puts that release, if it does come, around mid-March.
We have a Fox News alert. A massive earthquake shakes Alaska, sparking tsunami watches and warnings in Hawaii and up and down the west coast. The 8.2 magnitude quake hit near Kodiak and lasted more than a minute. No word on damage or if anyone is hurt, but we will certainly keep you posted with any new information we get. The government shutdown is over for now. President Trump signing off on a deal to keep the doors open for just 3 weeks. Now the race against the clock to pass a budget and immigration deal is on. Griff Jenkins is live in Washington, D.C. with the work that needs to get done and fast. Good morning, Griff.
Good morning, Jillian. It's over, but the clock is ticking, as you mentioned, so don't crack the champagne. President Trump signed another continuing resolution to keep the government open just until February 8th. Tweeting late last night, big win for Republicans as Democrats cave on shutdown. Now I want a big win for everyone. Should be able to get there. See you at the negotiating table. A deal was reached to reopen after Republicans in the Senate assured Minority Leader Chuck Schumer that they would soon consider legislation to protect the Dreamers.
If an agreement isn't reached by February the 8th, the Senate will immediately proceed to consideration of legislation dealing with DACA.
The vote was 81-18, with 15 Democrats plus Bernie Sanders voting against ending the shutdown. 2 Republicans joining them, Senator Rand Paul and Mike Lee. Then the House quickly approved it, but leaving House leaders trading barbs.
Now the Trump shutdown will end, but Republicans' wasteful incompetence continues. There's a dark cloud over the Capitol, Mr. Speaker.
This shutdown did not need to happen. However brief, it inflicted needless costs on the country. There are no winners here today.
Now, as lawmakers return to the drawing board, Sarah Huckabee Sanders making very clear the president's priorities.
We know that that's going to be part of this negotiation. That's something the president has committed to do, but we don't want to do that without the other three components. It's like having a stool with two legs. It doesn't work very well.
So here's the bottom line. The money runs out in 17 days. We'll see if they can get there in time. Guys?
Okay, Griff, thank you so much. Vice President Mike Pence affirming that the door for peace in the Middle East is more open than ever as he wraps up his overseas trip. In an exclusive interview with Shannon Bream, he says he supports the president's decision to declare Jerusalem as the capital of Israel.
Peace is now more possible, not less possible. By stating and recognizing what the president said is the obvious, that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, we can now move on, hopefully, and bring the parties back together.
In an address to the Israeli parliament, the vice president revealed the embassy will open ahead of schedule, should be by the end of next year. Earlier this morning, Mr. Pence held a bilateral meeting with Israeli President Reuven Rivlin. He will tour the Western Wall later today.
Secretary of State Rex Tillerson meeting with senior French officials in Paris today, discussing global issues like tensions in North Korea. He'll also help launch the International Partnership Against Impunity for Use of Chemical Weapons that will put pressure on Russia for protecting the Assad regime from repercussions with the UN. It comes a day after Tillerson visited London, where he toured the new U.S. Embassy.
2 American astronauts set to walk out into space today for the first time this year. They're scheduled to fix a robotic arm on the International Space Station.
Well, that part helps maintain the ISS and catch unmanned cargo ships. The mission starts in just about 2 hours. A second spacewalk is scheduled for Monday.
So cool.
Yeah. It is 10 minutes after the hour. Younger and more violent. The satanic MS-13 gang's brand new sick threat meant to beef up bloodshed in the U.S.
And a live look at the Capitol building this morning. The lights are back on
They are.
for now, but a new deadline is fast approaching. The can has been kicked yet again. How can Democrats and Republicans meet in the middle on a permanent deal on immigration, on DACA, all of this? Our political panel will debate that coming up.
Protesters setting our symbol of freedom on fire, but a patriotic police officer stepped in. His honorable, crisp salute going viral. We'll show you.
When I was younger, so much younger than today, I never needed anybody's help.
You take care of business. Let off Vicks Sinex. Breathe on.
All right, back in business. President Trump signing a deal to end the government shutdown and keep it funded for the next 3 weeks anyway. So he tweeted, big win for Republicans as Democrats cave on shutdown. Now I want a big win for everyone, including Republicans, Democrats, and DACA. But especially our great military and border security should be able to get there. See you at the negotiating table. So we got about 2.5 weeks to negotiate what needs to happen at that table to avoid yet another shutdown as we've kicked the can. Here to weigh in, our panel this morning, Olympic Media Managing Editor Katie Freites and Democratic strategist Michael Starr Hopkins. Guys, thanks so much for coming in this morning.
Thanks.
Michael, I want to start with you. You feel quite passionate about this, I understand. It certainly seems like the Democrats in some fashion have caved in here. Do you agree with that, and why do you think that happened?
I do. I think the Democrats absolutely caved. Once the shutdown happened, I think it was important for Democrats to stand firm. And we offered the wall, we offered funding for the wall, and didn't get what we needed to get back in return. There are 8,000 DACA recipients who need protection who don't have it yet. And now Democrats are left to, hope that Paul Ryan and Mitch McConnell keep their word. It wasn't a smart decision.
And I was shocked to hear that development from that Friday meeting in the Oval Office where they said that Schumer offered the wall and then Trump didn't take it. I still don't know exactly what happened in that meeting, and maybe we never will. Katie, I want to go to you. What do you think about the developments here and how this came to a close? Were you shocked to see the Republicans get some kind of a victory here?
I was a little bit. They tend to come out on the losing end of things like this, so I'm happy to see this time that it seems they didn't. But let's be clear here, to the Democratic senators who did not vote for this, like Senator Harris, Sanders, Booker, Warren, and others, they are willing to hurt DACA if it means refusing Trump a win. They do not want to compromise with him. They do not want to give him any legislative victory on immigration that goes to a win for Republicans. I think that, honestly, is pretty disgraceful to see from these senators, that they're willing to hurt all of these immigrants that they say that they care about if it means hurting Trump.
Well, Katie, a lot of the ones that you just mentioned there of this now smaller group that voted to keep the shutdown going, a lot of them are running for president and are probably trying to win over that left wing of the party. Michael, I want to go to you. You know, you have a lot of criticism of this was that it was basically the left side of the party, the far left wing of the party, controlling the party and creating this shutdown over something that I think a lot of the moderates didn't think was necessary. Now you had about 30 Democrats voted to open the government back up. You say they lost their backbone in this deal, but maybe it was a decision from the party saying this is not the hill we should be dying on, to shut down the government over illegal immigration.
Well, I don't think it was tied to one certain thing, but what I will say is that Democrats have made a bad habit of selling out their base, and I think it's going to be hard to get turnout up if Democrats continue to do that. You know, President Obama, under his administration, made a promise to those DACA recipients, and that promise hasn't been fulfilled yet. And so if Democrats want Democrats to turn out in 2018, they've got one choice: stand with the base.
Okay. Katie, you know, we were just talking about the possible offer that was given by Schumer to Trump for the wall in exchange for DACA and some other things. Now that the budget is out of this negotiation and it is simply an immigration negotiation, do you think that the Republicans, do you think that the president gets the wall?
I do think so. I think Democrats definitely lost a lot of their arguing tools, especially in opening up this shutdown. They no longer have that to hang over Republicans' heads. But we'll see what happens. I agree with you. We never exactly are probably going to know what was said in that Friday meeting. But I think this is definitely a win for Trump if he really does want this wall in terms of having something to hold over Democrats.
And Michael, real quick, I want to end with you. 10 seconds. Do you think the wall happens?
I do think the wall happens. I don't think we're going to build it from, the entire Mexican border, but I do think we're going to upgrade security.
Okay. All right, guys, thanks so much. We got a couple weeks to figure this all out. I'm sure we'll talk more deeply about all of it. All right, Jillian, over to you.
A terrifying threat as terrorists make it their mission to take down a passenger plane. The move the TSA just made to stop that from happening, and what it means for you. And addressing the elephant in the room, Susan Collins making negotiators use a talking stick to talk about reopening the government. Carly Shimkus here with the shutdown breakthrough that nearly happened in her office.
You higher.
We'll add encouraging players to stand.
Carly Shimkus is here with the social media firestorm that soon followed. Understandable that the NFL didn't want to touch this, but the optics don't look very good.
Well, okay, so a veterans organization named AmVets wanted the ad that you just saw on the screen to be a part of the upcoming Super Bowl's program. But the NFL rejected this ad, saying that it was just too political. NFL spokesman Brian McCarthy said in a statement, the Super Bowl game program is designed for fans to commemorate and celebrate the game, players, teams, and the Super Bowl. It's never been a place for advertising that could be considered by some as a political statement. But here's where the story gets a little bit confusing, because the NFL says that they did ask AmVets to consider using other phrases like please stand, please honor our veterans, or please stand for our veterans, and AmVets never responded. Well, this, of course, causing a firestorm on social media. Michael on Twitter says, good to know this veteran will be rejecting the NFL and the Super Bowl as a return of their favor. Another angry tweet says, I won't be watching. My conscience won't allow it. So AmVets says that the NFL is violating their free speech rights. The NFL says that veterans will be honored in other ways throughout the Super Bowl.
You know, I was tweeting a lot about football over the weekend, obviously watching the Eagles game, and I had so many people still responding with the hashtag like boycott the NFL. So it's still very much a thing. It that people are offended about.
Yes, yeah, that's right.
So what about a police officer who steps in to do the right thing?
Yeah, that's right. So members of Antifa, these are Antifa members, they, as you see here, burned an American flag over the weekend in Philadelphia. This happened in Philadelphia. But a transit police chief named Thomas Nessel says a patriotic police officer stepped in to dispose of the flag's remains respectfully, saying the burned flag left on the ground by Antifa received a crisp salute from a Philadelphia police officer who then collected the remains for proper disposal. I don't know if you can consider that a happy ending to this story, but it was a respectful one at least.
Yeah, I always love those stories. And let's.
I think you're going to like this one, though.
Well, yeah, I'm trying to figure this one out with Susan Collins here.
Yeah, I got to say, this is probably going to be one of the strangest things you'll hear all day. So a Republican Senator Susan Collins forced fellow lawmakers to use this is called a talking stick right here during government shutdown negotiations yesterday. The rules are the person with the talking stick is the only one allowed to speak, but things went south quite quickly when one senator interrupted another. The stick was thrown, and as a result, a glass elephant decorations that Collins had in her office almost shattered.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, so apparently it caused, a little bit of a lighthearted moment. A lot of lawmakers started laughing, and maybe that's how the government shutdown ended, over a glass elephant.
You said it was thrown?
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
I don't know if it really ended the shutdown because of the glass elephant. It's just speculation. But it could have.
Carly.
You never know.
Thank you, Carly. Very interesting.
Well, we do have a Fox News alert right now, and breaking at this moment, a massive 8.2 earthquake rocking Alaska. Millions of Americans now under a tsunami warning.
8.2 is a massive quake. We're going to talk more about that, give you an update. And remember when James Comey suggested that Hillary Clinton not be charged?
We are expressing to justice our view that no charges are appropriate in this case.
Well, some brand new revelations about that famous announcement, and maybe there was some fibbing going on in that speech. Our next guest blew the lid off the Clinton email scandal. Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton joins us live with his take on the missing FBI texts that we're now seeing, 5 months worth, why he says don't believe this story.
You watch for the coastal areas from Florence, Oregon to Crescent City, California.
Oh, you hear it right there. A Fox News alert, a huge earthquake, an 8.2 strikes near Kodiak, Alaska. That's in southern Alaska, and it has triggered fears of a tsunami.
Hawaii and the West Coast are under severe watches and warnings. Well, some locals say they felt their homes shaking when the 8.2 quake hit. Local reporters saying emergency officials are telling people to get to higher ground.
That's right. Schools are opening their doors for anybody who needs to evacuate. Let's send it straight over to senior meteorologist Janice Dean with what we can expect from this. That is a huge quake, Janice.
So we're getting information, and obviously this just happened maybe half an hour ago. What I am hearing is that from Washington to California, British Columbia to Alaska, we have the potential for significant inundation, and it is expecting or occurring because of that 8.2 earthquake just offshore. And what we have is a shift in the ocean basin, and that's why we have the potential for water, a wall of water to come on shore. We still don't have a lot of information. That's why the watch and the warning has been issued. But widespread dangerous coastal flooding is possible, and we are expecting the potential for waves to continue after the initial wave moves in. So, in some cases, we're not going to have a lot of time to get to higher ground. And that's why the National Weather Service has issued that tsunami watch and tsunami warning. This is an area that potentially you could feel earthquakes in the ocean here, and that triggers the potential for tsunami. But we do not have a lot of information here. Sometimes these preliminary reports are, more dangerous. It looks more dangerous than it actually is. We definitely need more information here. I can't give you a, expectation of how big this tsunami wave is going to be, or if there's going to be waves occurring after this. Obviously, this is something we're going to have to watch throughout the morning, and we're hoping, that this isn't as significant as it potentially could be.
Yeah, and it's tricky predicting these things because there's really no rhyme or reason to them. Sometimes you can get a tsunami. Sometimes you can really see nothing at all, and nobody really knows.
What we do know is this is a very powerful earthquake that could potentially trigger a very dangerous, life-threatening situation. So we are on top of it. We will keep you up to date.
Absolutely. Janice, thank you. Information is going to be trickling in now, and we will certainly keep you updated. Congressional Republicans now calling out the FBI for blaming a technical problem for 5 months of missing texts between two key bureau officials in the Clinton email and Russia investigations.
Of course, we need a second special counsel to get to the bottom of to get to the bottom of all this and answer the many questions we have.
Attorney General Jeff Sessions saying that the DOJ will leave no stone unturned in searching for all of these missing texts.
So where do we go from here? Joining us now is Judicial Watch President Tom Fitton. Tom, thanks for joining us this morning. I believe you say not to believe this story. Why?
Well, I just don't buy the texts are really missing. Judicial Watch has found with the IRS, they told us Lois Lerner's emails, or a portion of them were missing. It turns out they really weren't missing. They were on backup tapes. And of course, famously, Hillary Clinton says she deleted half her emails. It turns out the FBI was able to recover 72,000 pages of those deleted or otherwise hidden emails. So I think with some basic law enforcement techniques, these text messages can be recovered. And if I were Jeff Sessions, I wouldn't just leave it to the FBI bureaucracy to figure out how technically this happened. I'd send in the U.S. Marshals to recover and restore and preserve any evidence here, because it's not just these two FBI officials' accounts that I'm concerned about. You have other top FBI officials who, including Mr. Comey potentially, the number 2 at the FBI, who's currently still there, Andrew McCabe, his text messages. Who else was supposedly covered by this glitch?
Well, Tom, you know, we keep hearing these terms now. We've heard insurance policy for a couple months now as a phrase between Peter and Lisa Page, you know, regarding, you know, how to maybe prevent a Trump election is at least what the speculation could be. Now we've heard secret society as a text message that I think only Trey Gowdy has read about, you know, some kind of, who knows what that could be. And the timing of all this is interesting. These 5 months take place, you know, pretty soon after the election, up until I believe the day that Robert Mueller was assigned to look into all this stuff. That's the window that all of these messages have disappeared. It seems to be quite a coincidence, doesn't it?
Right. It's the information during that period of time. You had the dossier being leaked, James Comey showing President Trump the dodgy dossier. You had Comey being fired. You had General Flynn being ambushed with an interview by the FBI at the White House by Peter Strzok himself. You had Mr. Mueller being appointed. The day he was appointed, I think, is the last day the messages weren't captured. You know, look, if this was a private entity, there'd be no question about what needs to be done in terms of criminal in terms of a criminal investigation. And General Sessions needs to take this very seriously. I appreciate he says he wants to get to the bottom of it, but if it were me, we'd be facing a raid. Paul Manafort, he was accused of withholding evidence. They raided his home with guns drawn. And do we need to do that to the FBI? I don't think so, but we need to send U.S. Marshals, an independent law enforcement agency, over there to make sure nothing else is lost and maybe recover, as I suggested, the text messages that supposedly weren't captured.
Well, you know, we've seen a lot of the text messages, and we do have a text message exchange between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, you know, over the this whole Clinton investigation. And Peter Strzok says now the pressure really starts to finish. Is talking to the mid-year exam, the FBI case name for the Clinton investigation, and Lisa Page says, it sure does. We need to talk about follow-up call tomorrow. We still never have. You look at the text messages that have already been revealed, that we've already seen, that the public has already been able to, you know, make a judgment and opinion on this. And then you look at the fact that there are months worth of text messages that are gone. What do you think the public is supposed to think about this right now?
Well, in the least, the most charitable interpretation of those new Clinton text messages that have come out was that there was much in the way of political sensitivities about what was going on with the Clinton investigation. The campaign was heating up, and they felt pressure, to put it charitably, to close out the investigation or deal with it as quickly as they can. The less charitable interpretation is that we need to finish this up so Hillary can beat Donald Trump, who we don't like. I don't understand why these agents are still at the FBI given this information. If it was anyone else, they'd be marched out of the FBI subject to further inquiries. This is so frustrating because Director Wray is protecting Andrew McCabe, is protecting Peter Strzok, and then you had Mr. Robert Mueller, the special counsel, remove this gentleman from the investigation back in July of last year and not tell anyone about it for 4 or 5 months. There's a big ethics issue, both with Robert Mueller and the FBI, with the mishandling of these text messages and how they handled, frankly, the Trump and Clinton investigations generally.
Yeah, there's a lot of smoke here. It is a fascinating story, and we keep getting bits more, and we'll see if this investigation happens, what that digs up. Tom Fitton, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We do appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
The TSA tightening security on certain flights from the Middle East over terrorism threats. An emergency order now requiring 6 airlines from 5 predominantly Muslim countries to submit data on cargo entering the U.S. That includes the name of who is sending and receiving it. The TSA says the countries were selected because of a willingness by terrorists from those nations to attack.
A plea deal now in the works for the neighbor accused of attacking Senator Rand Paul. Prosecutors pushing for Rene Boucher to spend 21 months behind bars. It's a stiff penalty. The only tiff, nothing to do with politics. Instead, that tiff, I should say, this was over yard maintenance that he says boiled over, and says it wasn't political, although he is a Democrat. We're also hearing that the Kentucky lawmaker's 911 call for the first time. We're hearing that after that alleged assault. Let's hear that.
911, where's your emergency? I was assaulted by a neighbor, and I'd like the police to come and investigate and talk to the neighbor.
Okay. Where did the assault happen at?
In my yard while I was mowing the grass.
So there's a 911 call from Rand Paul. The alleged assault leaving Senator Paul with several broken ribs.
The public could have known sooner about the false Hawaii missile alert, but the governor forgot his Twitter password. David Ige making the embarrassing admission to reporters, saying he couldn't inform his followers sooner because he couldn't remember his access code. The false alert creating a statewide panic. It took officials 38 minutes to correct the mistake after an employee hit the wrong button. Yikes. 39 minutes after the hour, Chelsea Manning officially launching her Senate bid, but is illegal. The rule on the books that could cause a wrinkle in her plan.
And this is why you probably shouldn't smoke weed. The man who accidentally texted a cop looking for pot. Wait until you hear the officer's response. Shed even more blood. FBI officials reportedly telling VOA News that the gang wants to send younger and more violent members to the United States as the Trump administration cracks down on their gang. MS-13 mostly operates out of prisons in El Salvador. According to the Justice Department, there's about 10,000 members of this gang inside the United States. President Trump is one step closer to building his wall.
Do not worry. We are going to build the wall, okay? Don't worry. Don't even think about it.
He certainly promised it enough. The Trump administration now waiving more than 30 environmental rules to speed up construction of the wall in New Mexico. Homeland Security publishing a notice saying the waiver would allow the administration to begin replacing vehicle barriers with bollard walls along a 20-mile stretch of the border. And it's also being negotiated right now. Jill.
Convicted government secrets leaker Chelsea Manning taking to Twitter to confirm her Senate bid.
We don't need them anymore. We can do better. You're damn right we got this.
But could her political run be illegal, subjecting her to prosecution? Victor Hansen, law professor at New England Law, here now with a closer look at her campaign. Thanks for joining us this morning. So what do you think? Could this be illegal?
Well, it's certainly technically a violation of DOD directives for someone who is still on active duty service to run for political office without an express waiver or permission by in Chelsea's case, the Secretary of the Army. And we may wonder, well, why would that apply to her since she's been convicted? She's been, her sentence has been commuted, and But technically, she's still actually on active duty in what's known as excess leave while her appeal runs. So she is still a soldier in the United States Army at this time.
And that DOD directive that you were just referencing, it says a regular member on active duty under a call or order to active duty for more than 270 days may not be a nominee or candidate for a covered civil office unless the secretary concerned grants permission. Do you think that she will get permission?
I don't know if she'll even ask for permission. Whether she would get permission for that is an interesting question. Certainly, I think there are circumstances where permission has been granted, and I'm sure the main consideration has been whether or not that would affect that soldier's active duty service. Now, in Chelsea's case, I mean, she's not actually performing any military duties at this time, given her status on excess leave. So there is certainly the possibility that based upon that, the secretary could grant the waiver or grant permission to run for office. But my understanding from the directive is she has to first ask. And I don't know that there's been any indication or evidence that she has made the request.
Do you think she should get permission if she asks?
Well, that's an interesting issue. I don't think that the Army has much interest in keeping her on active duty for service. So this might be a case where the Secretary would decide that, given what her status is, given that it's very unlikely that she would ever return to full active service, that it would be a situation where permission should be granted. I don't know what other considerations the Secretary would make on that, but this may be a case where the Secretary would grant that request.
Now, we do have a statement from the Army, and this is a statement that was given to the Daily Caller. Fox News has independently confirmed this as well. And the statement is that Manning is currently on excess leave pending completion of the appellate review of the court-martial conviction. While on excess leave, Manning is on active duty, but in an unpaid status. Now, it seems Chelsea Manning might be a little confused about her own status because Chelsea Manning actually sent out a tweet saying, "I'm not on active duty. This is some weird confusion caused by the fact that I still have a court-martial appeal in the works." Where's the confusion here?
Well, I'm not sure where she is confused, but technically she is, yes, still on active duty. This notion or program of excess leave is not uncommon for soldiers who are actually serving a period of confinement that exceeds what their enlistment would be. Or it would be, in Chelsea's case, while she's waiting for her appeal to run, she is still on active duty. Her confusion might stem from the fact that she's not actually drilling or performing any services, but that does not change her status of being on active duty and excess leave.
Well, we'll certainly see what happens and see how this plays out. Victor Hansen, thank you for joining us.
You bet.
Okay, 47 minutes after the hour, Facebook doing some soul searching why the social media site is now rethinking its relationship with democracy.
But first, let's check in with Pete Hegseth, who is live in Riverview Diner in Montgomery, Illinois, having breakfast with friends. Hi, Pete.
Hi, Jillian. Don't talk to me about the game on Sunday. Don't do it. Don't do it. All right? Well, we're here. I couldn't hold back. I'm sorry. We're here for breakfast with friends on Fox and Friends because, this election has never been about the pundits. It's been about the people. So we're here at Montgomery, Illinois, which is just outside of Oswego, where my uncle lives, which is just outside of Chicago, which is a big city that you all know about. So come on out and join us at the Riverview Diner. Great food here. I hear the trucker's skillet is amazing. But we're going to ask people, this is a high-tax state. How has Trump's tax plan affected voters here? What do they think about the Schumer shutdown? He blinked. President Trump did not. The debate and discussion continues. I don't want to know what folks, who are paid to be pundits think about this. I want regular folks eating the trucker skillet telling me what they think about whether or not President Trump is making the right moves, improving their lives, and making America great again. We already have a few folks here, just a few. It's early, guys, so cut us some slack. But I'm going to give you a preview. My Uncle Todd, he is a businessman, quite deplorable himself, who does have a point of view, and he's going to be here later to give you his sense on how the president's doing. Don't miss it on Fox and Friends.